Okay, let's get going. Good morning and welcome to today's webinar. As you can see, it's navigating your brand to survive and thrive in challenging times. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to have such a great turnout and we're excited for our presenter. My name is Krista Glazier. I'm the Vice President of Communications at Center State CEO and I'll be moderating today. So as you can see and as you know from signing up, we're so lucky to have Stephanie Crockett, our Executive Vice President, Managing Director of Mower, as our expert speaker today. Mower is a marketing and advertising and public relations agency, as you probably know, headquartered here in Syracuse, but they have clients and offices across the country, and I believe across the globe, as Stephanie will point out in her presentation. Stephanie has more than 20 years of marketing and communications experience, and she's actually been involved with Center State CEO for more than a decade. She serves on our board as well as a number of other community boards, and Mower itself has been a Center State CEO member for more than 50 years. So we are so appreciative of all their support and especially the expertise that Stephanie brings to today's discussion. So before I turn it over to her, I just wanted to touch on a couple logistical ground rules before we get going. We're going to have everyone stay muted, please, through the course of the webinar. I want to give Stephanie opportunity to get through everything, and we will leave time at the end for questions from all of you. So during the presentation, we'd ask you to please use the chat feature at the bottom of the Zoom to, throughout the course of the presentation, put your questions into the chat, and we will get to those at the end of the program. We also are recording, so we will have this available on our website and social media following the event. I think that is everything, so I'm happy to turn it over to Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Krista. Thanks to Center State CEO and to Lisa, Najee, and all the folks on the team who have worked to get this set up. And I'm thrilled to be representing Mower and presenting to you guys today. You have to forgive me, I'm kind of working on two screens here, so I'll try and make sure I'm looking at the camera. So as Krista said, our topic today is really talking about navigating your brand to survive and thrive in challenging times. We know that this time is so different from anything any of us have experienced, and for us to contemplate what are the right ways that as brands and as companies we can really get through this and not only just sort of get out of it without being too scathed, but how can we really thrive as we're going through this time. So to sort of give you an introduction of what we're going to be covering on today, we're going to talk first about who is Mower. So a little bit about us as an agency, and I'll go over that very quickly. We will talk about the present, and we know that it's in peril, but what are ways that you can invest in your business to continue really keeping your brand top of mind. We'll talk about brand voice and how that aligns with what's happening currently and does it really align with that conversation. And then lastly, understanding the shifting media habits and behaviors of people today and how your advertising can adjust accordingly. So first, who is Mower? As Krista said, we are an integrated firm. We're an independent agency that is somewhat headquartered here in Syracuse. Eric Mower is our principal. He graduated from Syracuse University and started the agency 52 years ago. We rebranded about 2 years ago to just Mower, where we were previously Eric Mower and Associates. And as she mentioned, we actually have 9 offices. So most people know of us being here in Syracuse, but we have 5 offices in New York State, as well as offices in Cincinnati, Boston, Atlanta, and Charlotte. As I mentioned, we're an independent agency, so while we don't have physical offices across the globe, we do belong to 2 different organizations that are both kind of global reach and give us presence across the globe through a network of other independent agencies. One is called the Network One and one is called IPREX. IPREX is focused on public relations, but as we're executing work for our clients, both in market, so if we're doing a trade show in Germany, we have on-site presence there that we can leverage, as well as the ability to kind of work through this network and give us resources outside of the US. As a fully integrated agency, we have expertise in a variety of areas. Insight and analytics, which for us includes market research. We have that right in staff. We do communication planning, which includes, of course, media planning and buying, creative ideation, so all sorts of creative development, social media, so that's both creating content as well as buying media in the social media platforms, public relations, public relations and public affairs, which for us really incorporates typical media relations as well as a lot in crisis communications, media training, presentation training. So it's really a critical component of our company. We also do all things digital and direct. We build websites, we create videos, email campaigns, all sorts of online and digital advertising. We manage all of that for our clients as well. Design and branding. Many of the brands that we'll talk about today and some of the local clients that we have, you're going to be familiar with, that we have conducted and designed their brands and logos and really helped them kind of come into new positions in the market. And then, of course, strategy and account management. That's really where my background is, in leading clients and leading them through strategic planning. Our agency has specialties in a few different areas. Won't read all of them, but energy, healthcare, travel, and tourism. These are areas where we have an extraordinary amount of background. We get called upon through companies throughout the world to help them with campaigns that all fall into these categories and outside of that. Thinking about who our clients are, this is just a sample of some of what we call our best friends. So clients that we work with around the globe, from FedEx to KeyBank, to Ford, Kodak, Fisher-Price, Carestream, Siemens. And then I wanted to share the brands that we work with in this market that you guys will be familiar with. We have worked with many of these companies for a very, very long time. Kraus Health is a perfect example. They've been a client of ours for decades. I mentioned design and branding earlier. We developed that clock tower logo. The slogan that you're familiar with, "Take Me to Kraus," was something that Mower came up with many years ago. Some of the other brands that you see on the slide, like Loretto, Helio Health, others that have gone through recent rebranding or name changes, we were lucky enough to partner with those companies to do that work. We are the agency of record in the US for National Grid. And just to name a couple of others, Turning Stone is a big client for us, and we're lucky to work with the fine folks at the Food Bank at Syracuse University, and we helped Willow Rock with the launch of the Congress beer, which was certainly one of our more fun projects. So now that you know a little bit about us, I just wanted to get right into the content of our presentation. So starting off and thinking about investing in the future, and what does that mean today? As we know, again, things are tough. And so very often the first thing to go in a time of a recession or during a critical time like this is people spending in advertising. But research and history shows us, and the numbers that you see on the left-hand side are really a historical look at the impact on branding and spending during a recession and during difficult times. What we know is that for those brands who increase their spending during time, their return on investment increases by 2.7%. They have 42% better result and increases over their average. And then in addition to that brands that invest during that time also are seeing an increase in market share. And what we also know about this is that for those brands who aren't investing, others are, right? So if your brand has made the decision to pull back on advertising, there are other brands in the market who will begin to take that market share away from you, right? So they will continue to grow. They'll continue to have that presence. And what we know from actually a study that was done back in March of this year by the 4As, which is our industry association, is that 43% of respondents told them that it's really reassuring to hear from the brands that they know and trust during this time. And so it's really critical when you're contemplating how you're maintaining and how you're really able to kind of keep the brand top of mind and continue being successful, is that you continue spending. Now, it doesn't have to be spending at full capacity. We recognize that budgets are tough, but there are things that you can be doing to maintain that presence and be able to help you in the future as we come out of the crisis, that you're not going to have to do as much work to kind of get back to everything that you've lost over that time if you have completely stopped your spending. One of the things that's interesting that we've all seen in our personal lives over the last several weeks, and now we're into almost several months, is the number of things that we've got done over the last few weeks, right? Much to my husband's dismay, there's been many projects in our house, lots of closets organized and different things that we've done. Some of them are like these nonsensical projects that I don't know why I ever decided to undertake them, but not unlike the projects and things that we're finding to do at home that have gone by the wayside because of just day-to-day life and responsibilities. Those are some of the projects that we can be thinking about as brands and companies that go beyond just construction. I know, talking with my good friend Laura Surway, that while Lacey's has been closed, they've been doing an extraordinary amount of construction. We're going to see a bit of a facelift at Lacey's when we get to go back, which I can't wait for. But projects like that, when you think about as marketers that we can undertake, it's a really critical time for us to look and say, what are the things that I haven't been able to get to, or that we always need that are on that back shelf that we can take advantage of today? So starting to think a little bit about that, one of the most important things that we do, and a critical component of our relationships with clients, is the beginning of that relationship. We start with something we call success planning. It's our way for us to really look at the business objectives of our clients. How are they measuring, and how are our marketing activities aligning to what is important to their company? So are you measuring what counts? Are you looking at the business objective? If you have a gazillion clicks on your website or on your Facebook page, I don't really care if it's not moving the needle. If you need to sell widgets or you need to increase room nights in your hotel, you better make sure that your advertising is helping to do that. So when you're thinking about measuring what counts, what key performance indicators do you have in place currently? Are they the right ones? Are you measuring activity or accomplishments? If you're paying attention to things like number of followers that you have on Facebook or Twitter, are those really resulting in the business objectives that you need to accomplish? Are you using your metrics to inform your strategic decision making? Are those things that you're really able to take that data and take what you're pulling to inform the overall business and strategic decision making? Should you consider a new marketing plan for the recovering economy? When you think about your goals and objectives for your marketing today, you may need to shift. It could be that you're not going to expect as many room nights, but you can expect greater engagement in social media. So should you be shifting some of what you're doing for marketing, and how are those things, again, aligning to your overall business objectives? And then lastly, what will you need to measure in order to build success around those new realities? And do you have all the tools you need in order to measure those things? So secondarily, after measuring what it counts, we look at the number one project that we all know is like that thing on our shelf that is, we know it's such a huge undertaking. It's like cleaning out the garage, right? And it's the website. But this is probably one of the best times to be contemplating website. We know that there are folks that have some capacity, right? That perhaps don't have as much to do that they normally would in a normal course of time. This is an opportunity potentially to think about that. And the website being a project to undertake. It starts with really understanding, what does the outside world see when they visit your site? If you look at it from the point of view of a prospective customer, is it the experience that you want them to have? If, for example, you are a hotel and the number one thing you want them to do is to book a room, or do you want them to pay attention or to book a reservation in a dining option? Are those things really apparent? Do you make it easy for them on your site? Those are really important to contemplate how the perspective of the customer is being reflected in your site. How do you rank in search? Do your Google searching, see what's happening. How are you ranking? And is there opportunity for you to improve your SEO? Do you have folks on staff that are really testing some of those links that don't typically work? We know this happens. This happens on sites we go to in our personal lives. This happens on our own sites. Is anybody testing those links across the entire site to make sure that they're working? Is the content that you have on your sites engaging? Look at your Google Analytics on your pages. Are you paying attention to what content is people reading? What are they downloading? Are they really engaging? And then finally, what's the last time your site was updated? Now, it doesn't have to be a complete overhaul, start from scratch, begin there. It could be very insignificant feeling changes, but that will have a significant impact on the customer experience. Again, it could be changes in navigation. It could be just a refresh of a color palette, changing the way the content is appearing in the site. Those are all things that are really important to contemplate when more people are spending time online, and hopefully your team has some capacity to be taking a look at this really important, critical communications tool. I mentioned content when it relates to the site, but content obviously is used in a variety of places. And compelling content and having time to create content is one of the #1 things we hear from our clients all the time. They'd love to get their engineering team to be able to build and create white papers for them or create infographics, but they don't have the time. Well, perhaps right now is a good time to be contemplating whether or not there is capacity. If an engineer can't be out in the field, is there an opportunity for them to really draft some content that they wouldn't be normally able to do? First, take a look at content you have, and can it be updated or repurposed? It doesn't have to be, again, like the website, it doesn't have to be a start from scratch. It could be here's a content piece that we created before, now with changing times, perhaps COVID related, perhaps just it's a few years old, that things that could be updated or repurposed, kind of give it a fresh look. Who, again, as I mentioned, engineers who maybe can't be out in the field, are there subject matter experts in your company that can either draft content for your website or social channels? Could somebody on your staff interview them to find out what they can write about and what's important? And can you create some of that content to share on those outbound channels? And then also take a look at what your competitors are doing as far as content. What are you seeing in your industry publications? Could you have a different take on the same subject? Are there topics or trends that you hear from customers all the time that nobody is exploring, that you could own, that you could write some content about? Either reach out to your marketing firm or think about how you can create some of that internally. So again, #1, continue to invest in advertising, continue to invest in marketing. Your brand will suffer if you don't. And these are just a few ways in which you can continue making those investments. Okay, so we know it's important to stay current and to stay in top of mind and keep your brand in the forefront. But let's talk a little bit about what that brand voice is, right? We know the conversation is changing. Is there an opportunity for you? Do you need to change to go along with that? So we talk now about that notion of tuning into your brand voice, and it's not necessarily where you say it, but how you're saying it. So this slide shows us a significant shift, over just a period of 2 years, that consumers are really belief-driven buyers. And there is no time like now that the notion of being sensitive to what's happening currently in the market is more important than ever. We have seen so many brands do this well, and we've seen brands that haven't done it as well. And there's an opportunity right now to really take a look at what's the story you're sharing in the marketplace. How can you continue to be who you are, continue to have a really genuine, authentic voice, but make sure that it really is being mindful of the sensitive situation that we're in. So we pulled a couple of examples that I thought were really good in the market, some of which Mower was involved in, some of which were not. So I'll start with some things that we've seen across the market in, frankly, some of the hardest hit industries. And so I'll talk a little bit about each one as we go along. So the first campaign that we thought was great is for Hotels.com. Now, obviously, significant hit. And they took the opportunity to take Captain Obvious and really change that message. So now Hotels.com says, just stay home. So obviously staying home is not the message that they've been sharing, but they've stayed authentic to their brand. They've kept a little bit of that sort of fresh humor and comedy that Captain Obvious brings to all of their advertising. And they've been able to do that in a way that they're not trying to convince somebody to do something different, but they want to stay top of mind. They want to still be who they are, but share that message. This is an example of companies like Ford, 3M, GE, UAW, all coming together to speed the speed the production of their workers to create respirators for healthcare workers, ventilators for coronavirus patients. So we've seen so many stories of this happening right out of the gate. Companies like Spectrum and Verizon, and of course this example like Ford, and people that have done things to really support those that are in the greatest need and most impacted by the virus. Another example of that, which I thought was really interesting, is Union Square Hospitality Group. They run about 20 different restaurant companies within New York City, certainly hit extremely hard. They made a commitment to developing an employee relief fund, and that all of the proceeds from gift card sales are going into that employee relief fund, which is a really remarkable way that they've been able to show up for their employees. Locally, a great example, our friends at Beacon Skiff, who have stopped production and moved all of their distilling into hand sanitizer. Now, for those of you who have tried their tropical vodka, you will be happy when they come back and distill that again. But in the meantime, we have bottles of this in our house. I'm sure a lot of you guys do too. But this is a really incredible way that Beacon Skiff was able to, and really very humbly, share this message of what they've done and how they've been able to really step up in the market. The last example that Mower was not involved in that I want to share, I think, is one of the best examples of how a brand has stayed true to who they are and been able to put some advertising in the market that is really timely. And that's what we see from Burger King. I don't know if you guys have seen this TV spot, but they have now talked about people being couch patriots. I think it's genius. It is just a great way of them talking about the stay home of the Whopper instead of the home of the Whopper. Again, super authentic to who they are, using that bit of humor and that little bit of campiness and really communicate a great way that they're able to bring delivery and waive those delivery fees for their customers. So some examples of brands that we have been working with. The first one I'll share with you is Turning Stone. Turning Stone obviously closed their doors around March 16th and will probably be closed for the next few weeks to come. But they have such an incredibly loyal guest following. They are such a close-knit organization for a company that employs thousands. Oneida Nation Enterprises is really a pretty remarkable organization, and what they've been able to do is find a way to engage with their customers when they can't see them face to face. Obviously, there's great friendships between staff and guests and each other. And so they developed the Turning Stone from Home campaign, and hopefully this video will play okay for you guys. So I'll ask if somebody from Center State can let me know if that sound worked okay, because I have one other little video and I won't play it if it's not going to work. But
I could not hear the sound, Stephanie.
Couldn't hear the sound. Okay, all right, I'll skip through the next one then. Just to close off on Turning Stone, they have a lot of different aspects of the campaign. That particular one was a nice video. I would highly recommend you go to Turning Stone's social pages. They have a variety of videos where they're communicating. Not only they have a lot of different employees, the head of spa talking about ways that you can really bring rest and relaxation to your home. The head of dining talking about giving menu ideas and recipes. And so they have a really great way to engage with their customers. I'm going to skip over the next example. And forgive me, the next one here is for our client National Grid. Many brands, as you know, have really come up with not only great ways to message and change how they've communicated, but also what they're offering. And this is such a perfect example of something that National Grid has done. As you might be familiar with, National Grid, of course, promotes energy efficiency to their customers. And one of the ways that they do that is through a home energy assessment, where an energy specialist comes into your home, evaluates your insulation and your lighting and a variety of things, and gives you recommendations of how you can save money. The moment that home energy assessments were unable to happen, because you can't, of course, you're not going to be welcoming people into your home, unfortunately, they developed the virtual home energy assessment. So this is a way through FaceTime or through just sharing photos of your home and a conversation with an energy specialist on the phone, that they've offered a virtual home energy assessment to their customers. Unfortunately, this program is only available in Massachusetts, but hopefully NYSERDA has something like that for us in New York State. But in the month of April, they completed 500 of these virtual home energy assessments. So it's a way that that National Grid not only was able to change the way that they communicated and talked to their customers about, we know that you're spending time at home. We know that many of you are spending more energy than you have ever before. We want to help by giving you solutions and ways that you can try and control that energy spend. So they've developed different advertising and a whole different program for them to bring that to life. So a really, really awesome program that we've been lucky to work with them on. So just some advertising here, a couple of examples that talk about what you get for doing this, the benefits of this. And yes, they give 100% off insulation. It's such a great deal. So some social media and some banner ad advertising. So again, a great way that National Grid was able to really tune that brand voice to current times, not only with how they messaged, but also the products and things they were bringing to market. So when we think about brand voice and what that means for us, there's 3 different things that we'd like to recommend. Number 1 is really understanding about kind of confirming your position. How is your brand positioned in the market? What are you currently communicating? How do you talk about what your offerings are to your customers? Do you have a campaign or a tagline or a brand position that no longer makes sense in light of this crisis? Is there an opportunity, like Hotels.com did, to change that tagline and to change things up so that you're being sensitive? And really contemplating what sort of exercises can you do and internally to really help confirm those strengths and weaknesses. As an agency, our position is something we call brand as friend. We think about brands as friends and how they can build affection, relevance, and trust, which is kind of the 3 sort of pillars of friendship with their customers. And so we go through a brand as friend exercise and talking with our customers about what are ways that you're showing aspects of friendship, like trust. What's the story you're telling? What's the kind of style? Have you changed that a little bit? I can tell you, as we are working now on bringing Turning Stone back to life, as we're contemplating how to do the reopening for Turning Stone, it's not going to be the same kind of celebratory message you're used to in their advertising, because that tone just wouldn't be proper. So how are we really making some changes there? So first, it starts with, again, confirming your position. And then I think one of the most important things is really challenging those assumptions. And this goes back to the idea of having perhaps some kind of an exercise or a workshop that you go through with your team. It's important now more than ever to understand that even though humans are creatures of habit, our tendencies and practices have been disrupted. So contemplate, what are those 4 W's? Who, what, where, when, and why? Could you hold a brainstorming session or a workshop where different kind of stakeholders within your company can discuss the questions? Is it time to look at, here are things we've always done this way, but there could be differing opinions and ideas to explore that unveil those new opportunities? Can you sort of play skeptical reporter in your next strategy session and say, is this the right message we want to be communicating? Should we change the way that we bring this to life? Like National Grid did, should we contemplate not just stopping doing home energy assessments, but can we deliver this product or service in a different way? So really challenging those assumptions. This is a really critical time to do that, to make sure that you're tuning your brand voice to the current times. And then really the third aspect of that, and we talked about this a bit before, is analyzing the competition, paying attention to who your top competitors are. They may have changed in the last few weeks, right? So you look at restaurants, their competitors may have changed now because of who's offering delivery. Is the competition now a different way? Are you contemplating what products and services that they're offering, and who are they going to offer? What are they going to offer in the future? And is there a way for you to glean some changes to your offerings from that? How do they differ? And where can you look for additional market share? There are definitely opportunities to look at Gaps, right? What is your competition not delivering today, and where can you exploit those gaps? So one of the most important things when we talk about brand voice, when we're meeting with customers, we always talk about branding from like the four voices, right? You have, and we've talked already about the voice of the brand, like what's already your company's position. We've talked about the voice of the competition. Where do they come into play? The other two voices for us are the voice of the market. What's happening? We know that that is sort of like ever changing right now, but really paying attention to what's happening in your industry, what's happening globally, and how is the market impacting your brand. And then the fourth is really the voice of the customer. What are they telling you? And so as a result of us really trying to look at and think about those four voices, Mower undertook a research study, and we completed this just within the last few weeks. We surveyed 1,000 people and talked to them about day one. And that's sort of a air quote, because day one for many people looks differently. But we really wanted to understand, what is that voice of the customer? What can we understand about what impact coronavirus is going to have on how people spend, on how they travel, on what they're going to be willing to do when we reopen, whatever that looks like. And what are those things that people are going to be most comfortable doing, and what are they most happy about and excited looking forward to? So I'm going to bring up a few different slides from this study. We have a lot more information in here, really a lot of specifics around the travel industry, telemedicine, variety of areas. If you're interested in learning more about this study, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, and I can share some more. So I'm going to start with just talking a little bit about day one, and when will day one be over? This is fascinating, because you'll see here the results is that many people really interpret day one as being different. Some see this as being when the virus is no longer present in our country. Some see it as when the virus is no longer present in your state or in your county. Some see it as when a vaccine is available. And even more interesting is when people thought that this day one was going to happen. Now, again, we completed this survey April 10th, I think, was the last day we had this in the field. And 10% of people surveyed thought that day one was going to happen, right? They thought that COVID was going to be over. Sadly, we know that that's not the case, and we're looking for probably several months from now, if not longer. But again, it's really fascinating to look at this. As you can imagine, significant differences based on demographic. And one of the things I found to be the most fascinating from this study is the political party differences and things that you'll see in trends of how people interpreted day one and when they were ready to get back, and what they thought that meant by political affiliation. So this next slide talks about comfort level with activities on day one. Where do people are going to feel more comfortable? However they determine day one and what that looks like and when they think that's going to happen. The numbers on the far right are things that they'd be comfortable doing on day one. And as you go to the left towards the gray, that's like kind of a longer term frame or time frame, excuse me. So comfortable doing on day one, comfortable doing on day 30, on day 60. Certainly top one, getting ready back to regular work environment. I'm one of those folks. I'm ready to see my peeps. Resuming regular grocery shopping schedule, not having to worry about, picking days or what have you. I know we're out of that in Onondaga County, but certainly that's still something that people are limiting that for sure. Interesting findings here, and I'll continue going along. And again, we'll share these slides with you guys, so I know I'm going through them pretty quickly. But you'll see that it's definitely moving along that along the spectrum, right? So as businesses are preparing what opening up looks like for them, it's important to contemplate, what are consumers going to be comfortable doing on that day one? Are they going to be comfortable flying in an airplane, going to a spa, staying in a hotel? All of those things differ. And what's interesting for us is for clients that are in these industries, that are in these kind of businesses, we are contemplating and taking a deep dive at those demographics and things like political party to say, we should be targeting more of these kind of people that are more comfortable doing what we want them to do, right? Coming back to a restaurant, coming to a casino, whatever it is on day one, and we can target that a little bit further. So lots of great information in this study. What are people most excited about on day one? Not surprising, getting back to normal routine, freedom to go where they want, spending time with family and friends, and for many, of course, reduction in stress. And then 29% of people are really ready to get back to travel. Lots of great information about travel, again, in this study that we're not sharing today, but we have more of. Interesting information here about what will inform or what will influence purchases. On day one, I'm very happy to see that there is a really high percentage of people that are enthusiastic about supporting local businesses. People are really tied to products and services that are going to help them feel healthier and safer. Certainly things that they're hoping will stay the same and will continue as coronavirus ends. Not surprisingly, number one, better hygiene habits. Avoid shaking hands, which I thought was interesting. People really want to continue to see takeout and delivery from local restaurants. They like the idea of virtual get-togethers. My college friends and I have been talking about that a lot. For those who aren't local, we want to continue doing this. It gives us an opportunity to really connect in a better way than we can just over the phone. And then what's really interesting to me too is about change in spending habits. We're definitely seeing some shifts here. And this, again, really interesting data around based on demographics and based on political affiliations here. So you're seeing 55% of the audience plan to focus more on savings. Certainly many people have been really hit hard financially because of coronavirus, either salary reductions, out of work, so many people unemployed. But then you have folks that are like, no, I'm straight. Or folks that are like, life is too short. I'm not dealing with this. I really do not want to restrict myself. And how do we see them as, folks that may actually start spending more because they want to make the most of their days? So when we think a little bit about spending habits and all the things that we just saw, it definitely has an impact for sure. And not only thinking about where are people going to be ready to spend their business, but where are they spending their time from a media perspective? So sort of the third pillar of our story here is about tapping into new media habits. And how we understand, and as marketers, we can look at where are areas and ways based on people's consumption that we can increase spend and look to invest more dollars, and then places where we may want to be pulling back. So looking at the first slide here is really talking about a 60% increase in content consumed. And that really covers a variety of media, right? It covers a variety of things. It's video, it's TV, it's radio, it's certainly content online. We are seeing that 95% of Americans are spending more time on in-home media, not surprisingly, right? So, and certainly video is playing a huge role in that. So when it comes to video, that's looking at things like the videos that we're having today. And you can see this picture is a little Zoom video on the right is some folks from Mower. You can see me down in the right-hand corner listening very intently because Eric is speaking. So of course I'm listening very intently. Eric, if you're on the line, you can see my look of intent. And so not only is it about digital, but it's also linear, right? So we're seeing that many of those channels that are getting high increases, of course, are things like where you're spending digitally and socially too, for sure. So some of those impacts, we have a 32% decline in in-car listenership. Most of us aren't spending time in our car. I'm like loving every time I'm in my car and I get to listen to Sirius. I don't listen to it at home, but in any case, but at home radio usage is up as well. And looking at that as it's really sort of device agnostic, right? So we have people listening on their smartphones. So 19% increase there, 12% increase in laptops, smart speakers. So all of those ways that we're seeing those habits. We also have some information from the day one slide that we did that we asked people about social media habits and what they see as sort of their changes that they can expect. So here we're seeing some really interesting shifts in people saying that they feel like their social media usage will stay the same. We know across the board, social media usage has really gone up a lot. Twitter has seen a little bit of a resurgence. For those of you not on TikTok, that of course has really gone up considerably. People are really trying to find some fun ways to just find joy and engage with their kids while they're at home. And TikTok has been a great platform for that. Some are saying that they're using social more than usual. They're using it to get news, to engage with people. They're really hoping to take a little bit of a break. And then you'll see folks that see that, social media is going to increase more than ever because, again, it's a way for them to increase and their connections with friends and families. This is just a little bit I mentioned before, and I just wanted to share this as one slide relative to the media consumption, is how we're seeing those shifts from a political and demographic perspective and what we're seeing there. So I won't really read this. Again, we'll share the slides with you, but it's interesting to see that Democrats are significantly more likely to Republicans to indicate that their social media usage will not change on day one. But and Republicans say that they don't currently use social media and don't plan on in the future. So really, really interesting there. You're seeing, again, some shifts from a gender perspective, certainly from age, those with children, and those that are essential workers. So some really interesting data here that enables you as marketers to really tap into how you can use platforms like social media and digital online advertising that help you really target finely those people. Here are some good indications of ways to do that. So a couple ways that we can think about how you can tap into those new media habits. Talking to customers. We know that social media is the best way, the best channel for engaging customers, to having that actual one-on-one conversation. Listen to your customers on social. Now that people are using it more, are there common themes or inquiries when they reach out? Are you providing solutions or feedback in real time in a timely fashion? Are you listening as you're becoming more aware of missed opportunities or areas that can use improvement? When people are spending more time on social, use this time to talk to them and to converse with them. Okay, sorry, I lost my cursor here. So our next point is holding virtual events. Now, we've seen this, of course, with our own Zoom meetings. Certainly, we're doing this now. Center State has done an absolutely incredible job of keeping our members informed. Webinars that provide, hopefully you're seeing this as useful tips that you can provide to your customers, right? So this is an opportunity for us to share some information with you all. There are tons of opportunities for you guys to do that, certainly for your customers as well. A lot of open forum meetings where customers can ask questions, almost do like an Ask Me Anything like you do on Reddit or like a Facebook Live. This is a great time to do that. And then also contemplate doing things like customer appreciation events, featuring content that can entertain and inspire. Virtual events are hot right now. Use them to the best of your ability and as a way to really tap into this new media that you can benefit your customer relationships. And then the last aspect is an interesting one, and one that I think is really a bit about planning right now, right? We know, unfortunately, that there have been some significant changes in the way that people are spending money in media, that they're taking advantage of things like sports sponsorships or others. This could be a great time for you to review those things and say to yourself, are there places where we've wanted the brand to be? Have we always wanted to sponsor SU Sports, but we haven't been able to find that in our budget? Right now, it's a bit of a buyer's market. That will change when the crisis lifts, but most media companies have found a bit of a reduction. So is there an opportunity to find better pricing? Can you reallocate spending to differently, where you can find places with better engagement? How can you better leverage some of that media and some of that sponsorship opportunities? And then what will make the most sense after the crisis? Can you really lock in on opportunities when better deals are available now? So taking a look at those different areas and how you're spending and reviewing that spend and taking advantage of better pricing. Okay, so just a summary, and it's really about assessing the brand's opportunity. And then from here, we'll go into questions. So really, as we look at sort of a summary of what we just talked about, number one, continue to support some marketing. It will help you maintain brand health long-term, and it gives you an opportunity to pay attention to some of those projects that you may not normally find time to. Find the right message for your brand and category. Make sure that it's the right message during this content of the crisis. Continue to really question and challenge those assumptions to make sure you're doing the right thing. And then the last, explore new media. Account for shifting media. Allocate more to social media and video channels, and even contemplate more certainly in radio and some streaming audio as those shifts in media consumption change. And that is all we have for you. So thank you. I'll just put this thank you slide up. and we are ready to take questions. So hopefully you guys have some questions to ask.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. So much
You're welcome.
great information packed into a short amount of time.
I know it was packed.
So I'm just toggling over to the chat, and I'll relay some of the questions that we have in here. The first one goes back to some of the earlier slides related to SEO. How do we know? This is from Laura. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. How do we know what people in other regions are seeing? For example, my website is top search in Central New York, but not in North Carolina.
Sure. So that's something that you'll have to really dig into your Google account and look into the Google Analytics. And whether or not, if you're not familiar with how to do that, certainly reach out to a marketing firm or somebody that can help you. They're able to track visitors and track keyword searches and things by geography. And that will give you the ability to see how you're ranking in different regions.
Great. And just, folks, keep your questions coming in the chat, and we'll try to get to more of them. I also see some other people contributing to the conversation with some other ideas and recommendations as well. So that's another cool feature of the chat for these. This one is from Kurt D'Angelo. Can you share a few ideas of successful calls to action on website and social media? I know you showed some examples, I think after that question came in. So, but if you have any more to suggest or add on that.
Sure, yeah. I mean, obviously call to action really depends on what you're trying to accomplish, right, Kurt? So if it's about sales versus, visits, what have you, very often you're seeing a typical call to action is about trying to gather some information and trying to gain some form fills, if you will, from your customers. As we talked a lot about, content is really critical right now. People are thirsty for information, so providing them with some valuable content that will enable them to that will really entice them to want to speak with you and kind of continue that conversation. We're seeing with Mower, we're producing a ton of content right now. The level of engagement we're getting from our clients and prospective clients has really increased. The number of people that have that are filling out the form that they want to continue hearing from us, and it's because the value of the content is higher. So I would recommend providing valuable content, perhaps what we call sort of gating that content in some cases, so that in order to receive it, maybe after you've got a few pieces of really good content under your belt, put one that they have to fill out the form in order to download, could be a way for you to gather some customer information. Hopefully that answers your question, Kurt, but feel free to connect with me offline and we can talk more about it.
And so another one we have in here kind of ties into something I was going to maybe pose if it didn't come up. For a lot of small businesses that are struggling right now or have had to make some really difficult financial decisions, the question is, how do you budget marketing when you don't know if you'll be able to open it until phase 4, meaning I believe that's in reference to the governor's more details that he put out this week of what industries can open and which phases. And I think some of those still don't have actual dates associated with that. But when you're in a position where your budget is going to be pretty limited, how do you maybe find the lowest hanging fruit with the greatest bang for your buck, or how can you begin to prioritize that if resources are the biggest challenge?
Sure. That's a great question and makes a lot of sense. I think, I hope that when we are communicating about the importance of continuing to invest in the future, that doesn't mean, spend the way that you normally would be during this time. If your business isn't open, it doesn't really make a lot of sense for you to be spending a lot of money right now, but it does make sense for you to be really putting perhaps some resource and efforts into building and prepping for that. We talked about the need to potentially really make changes to your goals, changes to your marketing strategy and marketing plans. And that really is all about recognizing, okay, right now, should we be focused on trying to engage as many people as we can through our social channels, creating some content, sharing some things that you're able to build that up. So when the time comes, you have a greater audience of people, when you can start investing and putting some paid social media advertising in the market, for example, that you have a more engaged audience to do that with. So I think it's a perfect time to be thinking about using the time to do some of that listening, building up some of your tools and some of your messaging, and then you'll be really prepared and ready once you're able and you have a bit of a green light whenever we hope that comes, so that you're ready and prepared, so that the moment that happens, you can really flip the switch and be ready to go.
Okay, great. We have one more in the chat here. You mentioned brands forming friendships with consumers. How can brands stay sincere and trustworthy during a time like this? Consumers are often worried that brands are just trying to keep their business.
Yeah, it's a great question. The brand as friend philosophy that we have, and talking about that, I mentioned affection, relevance, and trust. We really look at like what we call the 9 drivers of friendship. And trust is critical, right? It's a critical component. But within those 9 drivers, there's things like honesty and story and the style and some of those other aspects. So as you look at that and how you're maintaining that trust, it's really looking at the way that you're communicating with customers and making sure that when you're evaluating your brand and evaluating that voice, that you're doing so in a way that feels very authentic to who you are, that you're questioning, and again, going back to that notion of sort of challenging assumptions. Are you able to put something in the market that really feels very, I don't want to say altruistic, that's not the right word, but that it really is sincerely about that you care about your customers. Turning Stone isn't making a dime right now off of what they're doing for their customers, but they really are trying to engage with them because they miss them. They want to maintain that relationship. They want them to know that they're thinking about them. And it's not because they're trying to like get the most out of them when they come back in and have them, put the most in the slot machine, but it's about a way to do that they recognize, because they have always showed them that they cared about them and they've been trustworthy as a brand, that they're able to just sort of shift that message a bit. So I think they've stayed really true to who they are and then just shifted it a bit so that it feels, again, very authentic and real to them. So people, because they haven't done a complete 180, it doesn't feel opportunistic. It feels very true to them.
Great. We have just a couple more minutes if anyone wants to throw in any further questions. Lots of thank you very much. You really know your stuff. A couple buy local plugs, which we love. So thank you folks for that. Someone named Matt Reed said he really enjoyed it and learned a lot.
That's my husband, full disclosure. Thank you, Maddie.
One more coming in from Center State CEO's Digital Communications and Marketing Manager. How do you, Najee Rahman, you can wave if you like. How do businesses determine KPIs? If you could answer maybe quickly on that.
Sure. Yeah. KPIs really are about, they really, from our perspective, as I mentioned, we have the success plan that we use, and it starts with business objective, right? It has to start there. That your performance indicators need to match your marketing to what you're trying to accomplish as a business. As I mentioned earlier, if our customers and I'll use National Grid as an example, our job is to help them get virtual home energy assessments completed. Our job is not to get them clicks on a landing page. Our job is not to get more engagement on their social media. Those are ways that they do that, and we know that those lead them. But those KPIs really lead to what that business objective is. So it has to start there. And then you think about what are those marketing strategies that will layer up to that. So if we know based on spending media in a certain way that people that get email are more likely to sign up for a virtual home energy assessment, that's where we invest the dollars. So those performance indicators then lead us to what those marketing decisions are. So if we're trying to increase the number of phone calls, because that's how you schedule a virtual home energy assessment, those are the things that we lead to. So we suggest media that helps promote phone calls or online engagement, what have you. So it has to start with that business objective. And then you build out the marketing strategy to support that. And that's how you develop the KPIs. It's not something that happens overnight. It usually takes us, several conversations to really get to that point, but it's about making sure that you're really measuring the right things that are going to have an impact on your bottom line. Now more than ever, we have to make sure we're using our dollars as efficiently as possible. We cannot spend a dime wasting it on something that isn't going to work. And so you have to make sure that that what works means is that it's helping the bottom line.
Great. Well, I think that is a good place to stop. Keep folks, I want to be mindful of people's times and just say thank you again, Stephanie, for sharing all of that with us. Lisa, or whoever's controlling, thank you. I was
You're
going to
welcome.
say, could advance that slide
Got it.
for me. So this is just a quick reminder on how to find and connect with us. We have a dedicated page within our website for all of our COVID-19 resources, all of our upcoming events. You can find them there as well. And of course on social media. If you have specific questions about resources for your business, work that we're doing, or how we can help you, please reach out at support@centerstateco.com. Thank you to all of you for everything you guys are doing as part of your role in the business community. We're going to need you all as we transition back into restarting the economy, and we look forward to supporting you through all of that. So thank you again, and have a fantastic rest of your day and week. Safely.
Thank you, everyone.